I'm Cynthia James, and this network is about changing lives one woman at a time. Hello and welcome to Women Awakening. I am your host, Cynthia James, and I'm really excited to be here with you. I get the opportunity to introduce you to women that inspire me, but also women that are change makers, that are visionaries, that understand that stepping into their power is what they are called to do at this time on the planet. So I'm grateful to be with you. Please know that you can follow us on iHeart, iTunes, Spreaker, Amazon, YouTube. Please subscribe. I do these every week, and the women are so powerful, their stories and the ways in which they shift things. So let me talk to you about my guest today. Her name is Marcy Little, and this is what her bio says. She is radiantly resilient. Throughout the challenges of an often traumatic upbringing and adulthood, she has never thought of herself as a victim. She has made beauty instead. As a language teacher for more than 25 years abroad and in the United States, she's touched lives. She saw the innate capability and capacity for wholeness in each of her students and worked towards nourishing this. Her rugged pursuit of healing after a toxic brush with mold in the classroom kicked her out of language teaching for good and led her to the path she is currently on. Her new book, Naked, My Body's Story, is a redemptive story of healing personal, generational, and collective sexual abuse at the cellular level of the body. Marcy works one-on-one with clients to help them find and develop their own tools for healing and wholeness. She is also a beloved yoga teacher, offering classes in person and online. This is exciting. She is creating and hosting the Healing Sexual Trauma Summit with over 25 international experts. I'm one of them. I'm very excited to be a part of it. And the summit is set to launch October 25th, 2021. So we will talk about how you can get in touch with her and sign up for the summit. Welcome, Marcy. I'm so happy that you're here.
I'm so happy to be here, Cynthia, and it's so good to see you again.
You as well. So let's just talk about where you came from. What was your childhood like?
Okay, get right into that. So, actually, my book, which is featured right here, it really talks a lot about that. And like many people and probably many women who are listening right now, I had a rough one, had a rough go, and came from a lineage of brilliance and terrible trauma and alcoholism and incest and mental illness and abuse. So you name it, it was in the lineage. And in my mother's body, she was really battling these demons as a mother, and she hadn't worked them out yet. And so as children, you could say, in a sense, we were victims, or we were part and parcel to her own process of healing. But she was working so hard at her own empowerment and reclaiming her own sense of self. So that was also a model. So it was like the whole gamut that you could imagine of terrible and also hopeful, But as a child, the hopeful wasn't so obvious to me, but some part of me obviously did get that. And I guess I would also say, I have my own history of sexual trauma in my own physical body. So, but I was born, fortunately, I guess I feel very lucky that I kind of had a lot of resilience and a lot of my own resources. And I think my sister had a much harder time than I did, for example, and she still struggles. And so whatever those qualities are in me, some kind of strength, some kind of like a resilience that was different than it is now. It was a different kind of resilience that you have as a child, as you do when you begin to really come into your own healing and fullness. But it really kind of got me through. So that's a little bit of my childhood.
Well, we have very similar childhood and lineage, actually, a lot of generational trauma and abuse in my life as well. And I love the word resilience because I believe that some of us who came on the planet to be healers and teachers, that was innate, that resilience was encoded within us to move through whatever we were going to move through so that then we could bring the message of possibility and healing. So I really love that. I want to talk to you about how you this whole experience with the mold, and the decision that you made. Can you just talk a little bit about what catapulted you out of that teaching modality, which was so much a part of your life?
Yeah, for sure. Actually, this happened when I interviewed you. When you speak, I get chills in my body and it just happened again. So I just love it. And I agree with what you just said so much. It's like, and I haven't heard, but I've never heard anybody say it that way, quite that way. It's like, as healers, when, we're like, we already have that coding. And then there's a moment where we get called. And so, yeah, so I had this brush with mold. I was a language teacher. I really loved teaching language. I began as an English as a second language teacher and a French teacher. And then later I became also a Spanish teacher. So I was really in the language field and I loved my students. It was just like, And, and at the same time, I think there was this deeper calling that was starting to really show up that I wasn't maybe ready to acknowledge yet. And so there I am, and I'm in my classroom and I get exposed to mold. It was awful. I had no idea what was going on. I got so sick, I couldn't function. And we found the mold. I moved to a different part of the school. And then 2 years later, it happened again in the safe classroom upstairs. So it happened twice in different contexts. And that second time, it just totally blew me out completely. And it was like the worst gift of my life in a sense, because it really kicked me out of language teaching. And I couldn't go back to that building anymore. And in fact, I couldn't go back to most buildings anymore. If there was any history of water damage, also I became sensitive to chemical off-gassing. So I suddenly had to become very in charge of the air that I was breathing. And this is pretty intense. It closed a lot of doors. But at this time, it became really clear that I wanted to heal my body of this toxicity. And I got myself very wisely into a yoga teacher training. I'd been doing yoga already for, 20 years, but it was like, oh, I'm gonna make it official. And I went to Mexico on a healing journey and I worked with some shamans. And then when I came back, it was like, boom, I came into contact with a deeper level of cellular memory of trauma. And it was like, this process of becoming more deeply aligned to our truest nature, we're going to find what's standing in the way. And for me, there was a connection between my reaction to mold and being toxified and the toxicity that was still living kind of subtly in my cells.
Well, you know what I love about that is that the universe said, okay, Marcy, I'm going to help you understand your calling. It's not going to be fun, but I'm going to show you once. And then if you don't get it, I'm going to show you again. So you really understand that you're being called to move to another plane, another level.
Yeah.
But I love that you listened. I really love that you listened. So then how did you start working with people? Did you have to go through your own healing process and then invite people in?
Yeah. So case in point, my book, I wrote this during this time while I was going through this healing process. And so when I came back from Mexico, the book actually, on my second night home, entered me sort of it's like a visitation. I don't know what else to call it. It came in whole. And for days on end, I couldn't stop writing. And then it became clear what my process was. It was like I had this opportunity because I was on leave from my job and couldn't return. It was like, here's this book that wants to be written. Here's this healing process that wants to happen. And so I just completely gave into it. And it was actually one of the happiest times in my life. Because it was such a deep spiritual practice. And I would begin my day with my practice, which I've been doing since my 20s, and yet it's changed and evolved over time. And here I was with this space and time to listen and actually enter into listening with a capital L every day, all day long, and then write down what the messages, the healing messages that were just coming at me, like pouring at me, and so during that time, it was meditation, it was yoga, and then it was asking the universe, what are the messages that need to come through and be written? And then it would just be very easy. And then I would go out into nature, and I spent so much time in our woods here. And so my connection to the earth, my relationship became so deep. And I feel like the earth was my messenger. It's like we had
Yes.
this relationship, and we just kept showing up for each other. And I would sit down, I would do that practice, and the book was just coming through, and the healing was coming through. And it's told here.
Yeah, well, what I love about that is, I grew up in the inner city, so it wasn't like a whole bunch of nature, and I remember when my cousins moved to the country, we went to visit them one time, and I remember stepping on their land feeling, oh, I can breathe here. But I still didn't consciously understand the power of nature and our connection and our interconnectivity. So there's been so many women that I've interviewed who have talked about how they've connected to nature and how nature has spoken to them and how they've received downloads. And I love that, but it really requires the ability to listen deeply, to really listen to that intuitive knowing and those downloads when they're being given to you, because they're around us all the time, but it's not always easy to get it because we're not trained.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's where having a strong practice, and I know you have one too. And I remember you saying it's a non-negotiable.
It's a non-negotiable.
A non-negotiable practice. It's like we must have some kind of a practice. It doesn't have to be the same for everybody, but some kind of a practice that allows us really to enter into a deeper level of listening to ourselves, to what our body is telling us. And that's what happened for me. It was like I was starting to listen more deeply to the messages that my body was giving me and honor them. And I was beginning to realize some of my patterns about how I survived was I was a pusher. I pushed through everything. And that was my resilience technique until it was like, oh, guess what? That resilience technique is no longer serving you. And now you need a new one.
Totally, yeah. You can push for a while. The universe goes, then, maybe it's not about resistance here. Maybe there's something else. So I want to talk about your summit because, first of all, for those of you who don't know, whenever anybody does a summit, this is a lot of work. This isn't just, I'll sit down call a bunch of people and then this is a lot of work to get the people, to get the interviews, to get it out there. But I want to talk about why you decided to do this summit on sexual trauma and call in all of these women.
Yeah. So initially it was really, the option to create a summit sort of came into my inbox. And again, I had that, something in me jumped towards it. I was like, okay. And my book was going to be coming out in July. And I was like, the theme of the healing here is really this deep cellular coming back into and re-owning the body. And we're in the midst still of a new generation of Me Too movement. And I was like, people don't really want to talk about this, do they? I have so many doubts about this, Cynthia. And then I started reaching out and creating this summit. And I did tons of research. And you're right, it is a yeoman's task. It's a labor of love. I started reaching out. And then the responses started to come. And there was like a hell yes response that blew me away. It's like, yes, I want to be part of this. Oh my gosh, this is so important. And the diversity of the women who have shown up and with, there's this common experience that we share. and also a diversity of different kinds of healing practices that have worked for them all, I really felt like, I had the privilege to have some space and time to really devote to my own healing. And we don't all have that. So what can I do to help women who don't necessarily have that privilege, who need some medicine, who need to make contact with other women who found a way to loving this body that they're living in, to live fully in the self that they are. And I think that the summit is offering that.
Yeah, well, I think it's really beautiful. And I want to tell you what is inspiring, because I've been on a number of summits, and we are watching women all over this planet say, what can we do for one another? How can we love one another? How can we lift one another? Instead of competing and pushing against each other, how can we take our common experiences as a way to transform the lives that we're living? So I just think it's exquisite to be able to see, okay, you've got all these women who are a yes to what I just said.
Yeah.
So what's been the biggest challenge for you in terms of this transitional moment in your life? What's been the biggest challenge?
Yeah. So one of the big challenges is that I'm not a one-trick pony. It's not like, this is my thing and I'm going to do it. Although that is also true. I am an author. I am a yoga practitioner and teacher. I am a healer. I'm helping people to learn how to listen to their bodies and heal trauma, not always sexual trauma, but that does seem to be my forte. And I also, have a husband. I have a son who has Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. He's 24, he's in a wheelchair, and he's doing really well, but it's a progressive muscle wasting illness. It's like I have a life that is incredibly rich and fulfilling, and also often that calls upon me. So when I sit down with, and here's a tragic thing that I'll just share. We just suffered the recent loss of my stepdaughter. Super, super sad, super sad. It was sudden, and it just was about 3 weeks ago, actually.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, thank you. And she was a bright light, and she had incredible challenges, but she charmed everyone with her life force who she came into contact with. So we're grieving. We're in a new phase of grief. And what I'm noticing is I'm back to working with my clients, is that it's like, and same thing with my yoga practice when I teach, it's the biggest challenge of the work is also what I love the most about it, which is I have to practice what I teach.
Yes.
I have to be what I'm offering. And it keeps me so honest and so humble. And the integrity must be there,
Yes.
or it's fake.
That's right. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those are extraordinary words of wisdom. And ladies, I hope that you're really listening. You cannot pretend or pray or meditate your way out of authenticity. You must be present with what is and stand in the face of it and still bring your light and still bring your love and still bring your gifts. And I love that you said I'm not a one-trick pony. I think so many of us on the planet who are doing different levels of healing work or whatever, we all have that same thing in common, right? We're this over here, and then we're this over here, and we're this over there. But I think that's the gift. It's like we are multifaceted. Human beings are multifaceted. And when you open, the universe will go, oh, well, let's do that. Oh, well, let's do this. Let's do that. So I love that you're doing that. And I love that you're a yes, that your internal yes is corresponding with the universal yes. And look what's being created. And this is probably just the tip of the iceberg of what's going to be birthed through you. So I love that.
Mm.
Would you please tell people how to get in touch with you and how to, connect to your summit? Even
Yes.
if ladies, even if you're listening to this after the summit, get in there and you can still go back and connect with it. So how do they do that?
Okay, so for the summit, it's a pretty easy URL. It's healingsexualtraumaSummit.com. Boom. You go there and you'll be right in the opt-in page and you'll see all the incredible speakers, including Cynthia, right there. So that's for the summit. And the summit is free. And there's also an option to purchase the summit at a low cost for the initial period of while the summit's running, and then it goes up. So if you do hear it later, the price will be higher, but it's still a bargain. But yeah, if you hear it beforehand or during, you can get in there. Yeah, if people want to check out more about my book too, my book Naked, My Body Story is available on Amazon in paperback and in Kindle. And if you go to my website, Marcy, spelled with a Y, marcylittle.com, there's a pop-up too that'll take you right, you hit the button and it'll take you to buying my book, or you can X out of that and you can learn more about who I am and what I do. And if you just want to contact me directly, shoot me an email. I would love to hear from you. Marcy with a Y. Most people get it wrong, so I keep emphasizing that. Marcy@marcylittle.com.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so impressed with who you are and what you do. And I ask my guest the same last question.
Yeah.
This show is called Women Awakening. What is the one thing you think is important about women awakening at this time?
Okay, I'm so excited about this question because women are the now and women are the future. And it is the awakened woman who's going to create and is going to be the change that the world so desperately needs today. The change being in our bodies fully, really caring for ourselves, getting to know ourselves, reclaiming the body that is ours will immediately translate to caring for this planet and the diversity of species and humanity. And without it, look what's happening. So we are at a turning point. It's now or never. And I would just say to every woman listening, you are what the world needs right now.
Okay, ladies, did you hear it? You are what the world needs right now. Amen, amen, amen. Marcy, thank you so much for being here, bringing your wisdom. I'm so excited about your book. I just feel like it's a huge success, and so is your summit. And I'm excited to see what is next for you.
Thank you, Cynthia.
So, ladies, like I said, we do this once a week. This is what I want you to know. This show was created with you in mind because you are original, powerful, dynamic, mighty, magnificent. You're here by a divine appointment at this time because you're necessary, because you're essential, because your voice is important, because the gifts that you bring are here at this time, because the universe is saying, oh, I need this person to move through. So whatever's calling you, you don't have to know how to get there. Just say yes, and the universe will sync up with you. Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be with you. Please subscribe, and I will see you next week. Many blessings to you.